So 2013 then, it's quite a big deal to Harley Davidson because it marks the 110th anniversary of the brand. And do you know what? Harley Davidson during those years has completely dominated the cruiser market, but it's more than just a motorcycle brand. I mean, people around the world, even if they've never seen a motorcycle in the flesh, will have heard of a Harley. And to many, it's even more than that. It's a proper lifestyle, it's a passion. But the problem is in the last few years, there's been a few pretenders to their throne. While Harley have been doing their classic thing with the old style and the old technology, some new manufacturers have come in and pushed on, especially in the muscle cruiser category, things to the next level. Thing is, while Harley's rivals maybe took the technology game and stakes up a little bit, it caused a bit of an issue for Harley because they're all about tradition and classic designs and classic technology. So they couldn't just suddenly turn around and produce this new modern fangled bike without keeping some of that tradition and history involved. Enter the CVO Breakout. This got launched back in 2012. Now, it was a whopping 22 to 24,000 pounds, and only 17 made it to UK. It was a sea of chrome and torque, and it looked incredible, but Harley needed to make it a little bit more practical and a little bit more affordable. This year, they've done that by bringing out the 2013 Breakout, and my goodness, have they got it right. Now, as we know from hanging around with the Bike Shed Motorcycle Club recently, retro has never been so cool. And what Harley have done with the Breakout is very, very clever. They brought in a young design lead to come in and, while retaining all the classic lines and looks and traditions of a Harley, make some subtle changes that just bring it up to date. Take the suspension, for instance. Now, this is a Harley Softail. Traditionally, that means that while it has a rigid swing arm look about it, it does have a couple of springs under the rear mudguard. Now, in the past, I've got on a Harley Softail and after about 2 hours I had to get off because my back's actually crumbled. The ride has been that bad. But combined with a really comfy seat on the Breakout, they have made some tweaks to the suspension that honestly make this one of the best riding Harleys I've ever been on. And you can see in the design lead's input in the way the bike actually looks. Gone are the pure chrome exhausts with a weird kind of matte finishing on them. Now, it's taken me a while to get used to it, but I quite like it. The big mag wheel at the front, again, really has grown on me. The only thing I would make a big change to when it comes to the front end of the bike is you've got these massive chrome bits where the forks are and a tiny little headlamp. It looks a bit weedy. But one thing I've done brilliantly with this bike is they have made it low. It looks like a proper drag strip racer. And don't get me wrong, it's long, but my goodness, it's mean. And it's only accentuated by the flat handlebars and low seating position, because trust me, when you're sitting on this and you pull up at the lights, you really do feel like a drag racer. Something Harley Davidson have always had, I suppose, in the bank over their rivals is build quality, and that's something that the Breakout doesn't let you down on. This bike is beautifully put together, and I'm not just talking about the overall finish, I'm talking about every little detail, every bolt, every piece of chrome, every braided hose. It's just put together beautifully, and the bike looks like a work of art. And of course, you have the added advantage of a Harley Davidson in as much that, yes, it looks beautiful when you ride it out of the showroom in pristine condition, but you know what? It's still pretty much going to look that way in 2 years' time, no matter how hard you've ridden it. Now, one gripe I've had in the past with Harley Davidsons is their stopping power. Normally on a cruiser, especially one that you buy in the UK, you'd expect double-sided front disc brakes. On a Harley, you only have one. Now, with the Breakout, ABS does come as standard, and while the brakes may not be as scary as some of the Harleys in the past, they still don't have that bite that I'd like when I'm on a bike that weighs 320 kilos. Something they have got absolutely spot on though is the chassis. Now, with a 240mm back profile and a bike as long as, well, it seems about as long as a double-decker bus, you'd think that this thing would go around corners as well as an iceberg. But that's the biggest surprise. With all the weight low down, and for some reason the geometry of the bike just all works, and it tips in beautifully. It is the smoothest cornering Harley Davidson I've ever ridden. But this brings me on to a bit of a gripe. Now, it may seem minor, but the pegs. Why make a bike that can go beautifully round corners and then restrict it to a 22-degree lean angle because you've got pegs that are really low on it? Don't get me wrong, you feel like a hero going around every corner scraping your pegs, but as my mate said to me once, well, that's great until you get one caught in a drain or in a pothole and you end up making a very expensive mess of your Harley Davidson. Now, it would be impossible not to mention the rear end of the Breakout. It is one sexy behind. Yes, it's got a 240mm back tyre like my old Hammer did, but there's something about the way the Softail just sits over the frame of that tyre that just looks wicked. Now let's talk about one of the big stars, the engine. They've put a 103 cubic inch, which is a 1690cc V-twin in there, producing 96 pound-foot of torque. Now, that's considerably down on its rivals. The Thunderbird Storm produces 115 pound-foot of torque and the Hammer S 113 pound-foot of torque. but it's still enough to give it some go. And the great thing about this engine is the way it delivers it. It truly is smooth, progressively working through the torque curve, and not as snatchy as some of the other muscle cruisers that we're used to. So while it may not be as much of a hooligan as some other muscle cruisers, it really does allow you to work the engine for a very smooth gearbox and probably match them in performance stakes. So we're talking about a Harley engine here with loads of character, and I'm not just talking about the traditional kind of bobbery character, we're talking about one with real performance, an engine that really wants to be ridden. Another great thing about the engine is the noise it makes. Now, the standard cans don't really do it justice, but if you put on some aftermarket cans for about £1,000, £1,500, it will sound spectacular and exactly how you imagined it should do. Price-wise, the Breakout starts at $15,699, which is much more expensive than its rivals, but you've got to take into account the build quality, the reliability, the dealer network, and the fact Harleys actually retain value. I'll give you one example. We chatted to a guy who had one of the 17 CVO Breakouts in the country earlier, and while he bought the bike for £22,000, before he'd even taken delivery of it, someone had offered him $44,000 for it. So not only was he getting a bike he's going to have a lot of fun on, but it was actually turning out to be a rather sweet investment. So I can't believe I'm saying this about Harley Davidson. They have made not just a brilliant HD, but a very good bike. And the first Harley Davidson I would recommend as a rider's bike. But something interesting happening in a few weeks' time. There's an Indian coming out.